What's good guys, B-Sticks here, go follow me on Instagram, cop some of my free mini kits as well, the link is down there, and we are going to take a deep dive again into the chords of BRENT FAIYAZ today, and they're going to really help us with R&B, dark R&B, vintage R&B, all that kind of stuff. And the reason we're going to use Pistachios is because it is in A minor, which shares the same notes as C major. So we're going to go to the piano, we're going to look at the chords in this track, how to break them down and how we can use them. In the end, we're going to make our own sample, which takes some influence from Pistachios, and I'm going to show you some tricks and some source, and I'm going to get into it, so let's go. So Pistachios is a minor 1-4. Now what does that mean? What that means is that the chords move from the 1 chord to the 4 chord. So in the key of A minor, the 1 chord is some form of A minor chord, and that could be an A minor triad, an A minor 7th, an A minor 9th, an A minor 11th, and so on. So you see, when we say 1, we are referring to the first chord in the A minor scale. When we say that it moves to the 4 chord after the 1 chord, we have to work out what the 4 chord is. So A minor is the relative minor scale of C major. Okay? Now, if we go back to C major, we can start to understand where this comes from. So we've done this before in another video, but we're going to recap the C major scale and see where the A minor scale fits into the C major scale. Remember, the C major scale contains all of the white keys, just like the A minor scale does. So let's go. C1, D2, E3, F4, G5, A6, and that's where we're going to be building our A minor scale from. B7, and back to C, which you can see again as 8 or 1. If we keep going, that D there becomes a 9th extension. 10, 11, the F becomes the 11th. All the extensions that we talk about sometimes, major 9, major 11 chords, all we do is add more notes that extend past the original octave range. So you may be asking, how does that relate to A minor? Well, if we count to the 6th degree of the C major scale, we get to the note A. Now what happens if we start playing every white note from A? Check this out. By doing that, A to A there, we have played an A minor scale. You can also see this as the 6th mode. Modes are a fancy musical term of the C major scale. All the modes that we can get from the C major scale all use all of the white notes, but they start on different notes. So if we were to start, say, on F and play all the notes up to F, we get something that's called F Lydian. But we don't need to worry about all of that right now. All we need to think about is our natural minor scale, which comes from the 6th degree of the C major scale and contains all of the white notes. Now, we learned last time that to build a major triad, all we needed to do was take the 1, the 3, and the 5 in the C major scale, make this shape, play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note. We were left with a C major triad. And the cool thing is that exact same shape works on A minor. So if we go to the A now and play that, do you notice we've created a nice A minor chord? What happens if we take that shape and walk it up a couple of spaces? So we've got our 1 chord is an A minor chord, our 2 chord is a B diminished chord, our 3 chord is a C major chord. Here we go, our 4 chord now is a D minor chord. What do we remember? That Pistachios is a 1, 4. All that means in its simplest form is that we are going from an A minor chord, some kind of A minor chord, to a D minor chord. Now if it was a 1, 4, 5, which many R&B songs are, we could go from our 1 chord, our 4 chord, to our 5 chord, which is an E minor triad, and then maybe back to our 1 chord again. We can write songs like that, we can make samples like that, but it all sounds a bit boring with the notes just down there. So watch this. If we take this A in the A minor triad and we move it up to here, so we've basically moved it up a whole octave, that is also an A minor triad. However, we have moved the A up to make the top note, or sometimes we could say that's the melody note. Now, we know that to make a D minor triad, all we need to do is the shape, the same shape that we started with, starting on the D note. So watch this. What if we went like this now? We're still doing a 1/4 progression, a minor 1/4 progression, but we have that note playing through every chord, which creates something that we call a common tone between the chords. Common tones can be really useful and really powerful, so if you can utilize that in your samples and your writing, then try and do that. We already know we can strum the notes out to make them sound a little bit more professional, but the other thing we know we can do is add sevenths. So let's go back to our bog standard A minor triad here. If we skip another note and we add this G on top, we have an A minor 7th chord. It sounds beautiful, right? Quite sad, quite sullen, but a really nice sound. If we do the same, starting on the D, watch this. So now we have a D minor 7th chord. However, the C up there sounds a bit bright to me. So what if we took this C, dropped it down here? I like that sound. So if we were to play our A minor 7th and then go to our D minor 7th here, do you see how cool that sounds? And all we've done is just move the C note in the D minor 7th down an octave. So you can see that moving notes around, even just one note, can create really powerful results. Now we could start playing around, and I want you to explore different notes. And remember, because we are in A minor and all the white notes are our friends here, we can try and add any white note to our chord. Watch this. It sounds really cool, right? It's still an A minor chord, but we're just adding different notes in the A minor scale to make it more interesting. We can create little melodies like that, and we can even move these chords around. Look. Let's go to the D minor chord. You see? So we can start to build something really interesting on melodies by just using really simple moves here on all of the white keys. So let's jump back into Logic and get cracking with this sample. So we're here in Logic now, and I just want us to look at the main sound here. I'm going to just take the processing off initially, and let's listen to what we've got. So I've just programmed the chords that we were looking at on the keyboard, and we've got a minor 1/4, remember? Same progression that we had in Pistachios. So we start with this A minor 7th. So you've got the A, the C, the E, and the G, which is just as we saw in root position. And I've just strummed the notes out a little bit here to give it a little bit more realism. So this second chord, we can see it's a D minor chord, but I'm just using the A as the bottom note, as I was showing you with inversions. So I've just basically taken our third note in the chord of D minor, the A note, and dropped it down to be our bottom note. So it just gives us an interesting sound to this chord here. And all I've done is I've doubled this A, I've put it on top as well. So the notes are still within the D minor 7 chord, but you'll notice there's 5 notes because I've just put the A on top. And I did that because I'm creating movement from this G to this A here. So if you listen to firstly this chord in isolation, it's got a really nice colour to it. But if we listen to these two chords one after the other, you can hear that it's rising, so there's movement there, it's going somewhere. And then all I've done for this third chord here is I've just gone to an A minor triad. So very boring, very bog standard, but it works here really nicely in the progression. So let's listen to how that sounds with these two notes before it. And then I've done the same again. From bar 5 to bar 8, I'm just playing this A minor triad twice. And I've got this tiny little note here at the end, which brings us back around to the A minor 7th in the beginning. So if we listen to the whole phrase, let's see how that sounds. And that's all I needed melody wise to create something with space and something that a producer could then build on, add drums to. So let's look at the processing. If you see my other videos, you know some of these plugins. RC20 on the Vinyl 1. Phaser, that's a little bit of movement. EQing a lot away there. And then, so sound shifter here, you're like, oh, it's doing nothing. But actually, if I open up the automation and show you what I'm doing here, it's adding a really cool pitch bend effect, which you do hear something similar in Pistachios as well. So check out this second chord here. So it almost sounds like a tape stop effect that you get from an old tape machine. Doing it again on the fourth chord, and that's just giving us some more variation, some movement, making it sound interesting. So then added an S1 just to give it some width. So we've got this all together. So you hear that there? I doubled those chords and I added some interesting processing here. Portal on this from the Grain Synthesis bundle, Time Traveler, which just gives us some interesting trails on the notes here. I won't bother talking you through these chords because they're exactly the same as before, but I added 2 sound shifters, one after the other, and all I'm trying to do here is create a high texture to go on top of the main EP. So you can hear that there in conjunction with just giving us some sparkle, some high end at the top there. And then again, I doubled the chords again, or tripled the chords, should I say. This time I used the East West Opus Hollywood backup singers. I moved the inversions around again, kept the notes all in a very similar space, and that works really well on vocal sounds, I find. So on its own, not much processing on here, but just wanted to give some more low mid energy to the synths and the musical parts here. Nothing too crazy there. My processing, just a bit of reels and some channel EQ, Valhalla Vintage, so nothing you haven't seen before. Added bass. Now the bass is pretty basic here, excuse the pun. So following root notes, a couple of passing tones here. And one interesting thing that I did was I went to an F here. You can use any notes that you feel work in the C major scale, and as I've said before, I normally just sing my lines out, boom, doom, 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 and then I'll just work out what notes they are, draw them in, or sometimes I play them in. I've got bass, live bass over there. Sometimes I play on my real bass, or I oftentimes am lazy and I just use the Rickenbacker bass in Contact. It's a great sound. It works really well, and loads of big sample makers love to use it. So that was actually it for all the musical parts of the sample. I added this interesting reverse vocal sort of thing that is actually from Monty Booker's kit here. Love that. It works really well in the sample, just to give it interest. Ear candies are really important, and if you want to see me do a whole video on ear candies, just comment below and say, yep, I want to see that. So I used Logic's drummer track to create a interesting percussion patch here, just called South Beach. Then I bounced it out because it was in double time. It sounded like this, so I bounced that, committed it to audio. I stretched it double the length, so effectively that half timed it. And then I added some interesting processing, and we were left with this. This washy grain break preset from Shaperbox, which added some nice texture. Then I added a little rim shot, which you can hear here. And on there, I've put my favorite Arturia Spring and this interesting space delay. Check out my settings here if you're interested, just to give it a little bit of lo-fi delay to that rim shot, and it again adds a bit of movement. Added an airport texture, which is just chatting at an airport, Apple Loop I believe, and some metallic fire, which is exactly what it says, some metallic fire.
So if you know me, you know that I always like to use Sound Shifter on my master bus. So you've seen my master bus many a time. So when I actually engage this, which is set to -2 semitones, we're left with this sound. So there you have it. An interesting sample, really simple, but with a couple of good techniques that have really helped us elevate these simple chords to something really interesting. So go try that. Hit me up on Instagram. I want to see how you guys are taking this information. If you like what you're seeing, just please like and subscribe. Get my free mini kits and support your boy. Peace.